Hello, my name is Leslie Spees. I'm with Influence HR Consulting, obviously doing HR consulting. Today's presentation is on the HR Playbook for construction and the trades. So why is this important? I know that sometimes HR seems like a necessary evil, but every successful project starts with a team that shows up, works safely, and takes pride in their work. And this is only going to happen if you have smart, intentional HR practices. The price for ignoring HR is going to result in turnover, drama, nobody wants that, safety problems, and legal fees. So here's some more specific statistics, and I have more if you're interested. But 83% of construction firms report difficulty hiring, and that is the highest in 2 decades. The average cost of turnover in construction and the trades is $5,000 per worker. A single bad hire costs up to 30% of an employee's annual salary. Misclassifying employees as contractors can result in back pay penalties and taxes of 40% of that worker's wages. And improper I-9 forms, which are the forms that establish eligibility to work in the U.S., can result in fines of $230 to $2,304 per violation. So I want to start by defining HR because it is different things to different people. HR really manages the employee life cycle. That's everything from hiring, onboarding, training and development, performance management, employee engagement, benefits, safety, compensation, and through termination. HR contributes to a positive work culture and it helps ensure legal compliance. So many smaller organizations really don't have a dedicated HR resource, but even if you don't have a dedicated resource, you still have an HR function that needs to be led. We're going to go through 5 essential HR practices for construction in the trades. And we'll go through each of these. So the first is clarify job responsibilities, policies, and procedures. So it's very important to have clear job descriptions because it's going to prevent confusion about the scope of work and also foster accountability. So in your job description, you're going to want to have an overall summary. You're going to want to have the major job tasks that they perform with a performs other duties as assigned. You want to have the qualifications and skills needed, and you want to have the physical requirements because sometimes that is needed, especially if there is a question related to the Americans with Disabilities Act and the ability to perform essential functions of the job. An employee handbook is also important for 3C reasons for clarity, communication, and compliance. So, for clarity, if you don't have a handbook and you don't have policies developed, a lot of times you're going to spin your wheels trying to solve the same problems. Where if you had a written down policy, it would be clear on how you need to handle the situation. Obviously, it helps with communication with new and existing employees, and it's very important for compliance. It's going to save you when it comes to things like unemployment if you have a handbook that has a policy outlined that the employee has signed for, and also if you have legal challenges. So, very important to have a handbook. Don't chat GPT it. You can certainly get some policies that way, but it needs to be reviewed and legally sound. Number 2 is ensure compliance. The most common HR compliance issues in construction and the trades involve safety, pay, and work classification errors. And I shared a few statistics, but of course, safety, if you don't follow proper procedures outlined by OSHA, can be a big, big expensive deal. Pay, you need to make sure that you are paying employees properly and that you are classifying them properly, which is where the work classification falls in. So you need to make sure that you're classifying them correctly as exempt and non-exempt, which is hourly. and that contractors are not misclassified. And then with pay, you want to make sure that you are paying everyone correctly. There's things like travel pay and things like that that you need to make sure you know the rules around. Number three, establish competitive pay and benefits. So you want to think about what you want your pay strategy to be. Do you want to exceed the pay in the market in order to attract the best talent? Do you want to meet it, or do you want to lag a little bit for whatever reason because you need to, or you feel like you can still recruit? Research competitive pay. You can go to trade organizations to get some of that information. Also, the Bureau of Labor Statistics online has some free information. There are other sources where you have to pay, like salary.com and PayScale. But those are good sources. You can check with HR consultants. You can try Chat GPT and Google to see what comes up. So different ways that you can find out what's appropriate for pay. And consider things like safety and attendance bonuses. Referral bonuses is a really good strategy for getting quality hires. But if the referral comes from an employee who's not so good, I would be careful. You may offer some incentives for project completion, productivity incentives, and maybe tool or uniform stipends. So just get creative with it. Try to get the most bang for your buck. And you want to consider the benefits that you could offer. I know that many construction and trade organizations are smaller, so, you may not have a lot of money to spend on benefits, but there are some things that you can offer very economically. Paid holidays is a consideration, maybe some PTO, health accident insurance. So it is difficult to be able to offer health insurance, I know. But one of the things that you can do is consider a stipend so that employees can purchase health insurance on the marketplace. In addition, there are insurance policies like life insurance, accident, disability, things like that, that you can offer that are employee paid. So you get a discount as an employer that you can pass along to your employees, but they are actually paying the cost of that insurance. You're just offering it to them as a more accessible, lower rate kind of thing than if they were doing it on their own. Retirement options. So you could consider a simple IRA. You could consider a 401k program, just depending on what meets your needs. And then flexible scheduling, where you can do that just to ensure that employees have the ability for some work-life integration. So just a few suggestions, but you can certainly get creative with what you could offer on benefits, and it doesn't have to be real expensive. Employee well-being and employee assistance programs are other things that you could consider. Number four, you want to hire and onboard well. Hiring the right people is crucial. If you've ever had a bad hire, they can cause a lot of trouble and be very expensive in terms of time, morale, damage that they do, just all of those things. So it's very important to hire the right people. If you have a probationary period, which I recommend the first 3 months, I would manage people out if you do get somebody in that's not a good fit. But some things that you can do to ensure that you're hiring the best people that you can are behavior-based questions around things like teamwork, reliability, and safety. And what I mean by behavioral-based questions is you're going to take the different components of the job and try to ask some questions around that. It's based on the belief that past behavior is the best predictor of future success. So, example of a behavior-based question might be, tell me about a time when you dealt with a difficult team member. Tell me about a time that you saw a potential safety issue and how you handled that. asking some questions like that. Chat GPT or AI can provide you with some questions that you might want to use around that. You can actually upload the job description and ask for some questions. The other thing that you want to do is that people are involved in the interview process. You need to have them trained on what to ask and what not to ask and how to run a good interview because that's important. You want to determine if the candidate aligns with your organization's values because if they don't, it's not going to be a good long-term fit. You want to provide a realistic job preview. So if you are painting the job and the work culture one way and it's really not quite that rosy, when they come in, they're likely to leave. So you want to make sure that they understand what it's really like and what a day in the life would be like. And then consider pre-employment requirements. So, do you want to do a background check, drug screen? If it is somebody who's going to be a driver, you want to definitely do an MVR report. So, just looking at all of those things. And checking references can be a really good strategy. I know that that can be time consuming. It can be hard to get a hold of people and get any information. But if it's for a key position, I highly recommend at least trying to get some employment references. And you don't want them for their cousin or their best friend. You want them from previous employers. Once you hire the right person, you want to make sure that you onboard them well. So, onboarding is the process really from the time the offer is made through about the first 3 months, all of the things that you do to assimilate them into your organization and set them up for success. So, some things that can be helpful as far as that goes are providing some clear first day instructions. Everybody is a little anxious when they're starting a new job. If they have clear instructions on where they need to report, what time, what they need to wear, what lunch is going to be, all of that kind of stuff, it's going to reduce their anxiety. You want to have a structured training plan. Having a buddy is a good strategy. So you want to assign somebody who's a positive role model to kind of help them assimilate into the culture and that they can ask questions without having to always ask their supervisor, which sometimes can be intimidating. Ensure they have the proper gear and tools needed when they start and check in with them regularly. And I don't mean just saying, how's it going? They say fine, and you say great. I mean, just kind of having a two-way discussion. How are things going? What additional training do you need? Is the job what you thought it would be when you started? What suggestions do you have? All of those kind of things. Number 5, and this was a big one. You want to build a strong work culture. And we'll go through 5 pillars of a great culture in construction in the trades. So the first is good leaders. You want to make sure that you invest in your leaders because they impact 70% of an employee's motivation, and they're the number one reason why people leave. So you want to make sure that you develop them in emotional intelligence, in being a good communicator, in coaching rather than always fixing, in giving feedback, employment law. All of those things are important for leaders to know. Safety first. So you want to make sure that you have a safety first culture and that you have processes in place for them to report near misses, that you celebrate safe work environment, all of those kind of things. Employee appreciation is key, and this applies really across industries. It's just a basic human need. So, given some regular recognition, I like to use the PATS acronym to kind of frame the best recognition. So, the P is tapping into the employee's preferences. The A is being authentic. So don't make it feel like you're just kind of checking off a box or doing it because you think you should. Make it authentic. You want it to be timely. So as soon as possible after whatever the act is that you're recognizing. And then you want to be specific. So much more than a good job. You want to share specifically what they did well so that they'll know what behavior to repeat. And then flexibility, that is more important than ever. I know that that is probably challenging in construction and the trades, but however you can promote flexibility and well-being of employees is going to go a long way for retaining and engaging them. In conclusion, you want to build your people like you build your projects on a strong, safe foundation. When your team thrives, your business is going to thrive. If you have any questions or would like additional information, oops, we got a typo there, or assistance, please feel free to reach out to me. Here is my contact information. Influence HR Consulting is a consulting firm based in the Triad region of North Carolina, but can really work anywhere with technology. And I help busy leaders and HR professionals attract, retain, and develop talented employees. So please reach out if I can help you in any way. Thanks for listening to this webinar. And again, reach out if I can help you.